here we have him, David McKay.
Correct.
How are you?
As opposed to McKay.
As opposed to McKay.
G'day, Swan. Great to see you, mate.
Same, Vince.
And thank you for joining us on the Jumper Punch.
My pleasure.
Now, we should actually explain, Rocco, that you and I had a bit of a debate when it came to number 43.
Yes.
In the numbers for the Guernsey numbers.
I wanted David.
No.
A likely story.
Well, let's just say that because we had Ange for 39, we thought it was only appropriate to make Kuda 43. He got it over you by 15 games, I think.
Yes.
He holds the record now.
But you got it over him with
for
3
premierships.
premierships.
Four premierships.
Well, 3 more than him.
3 more, yeah.
Yes.
But, of course, yes, I think Kuda's played 278 in the number 43 and you played 263. So
Yeah, I think I had the biggest number of games for that particular jumper until Kuda came
until he came along. Did you ever go up to him and say, hey, how about getting the lower number?
I always say I was the original, but not necessarily the best.
I think that's very debatable.
Tell me something. How did you get the 43? Is there a story to that?
Yeah.
The first year I was at Carlton, I only made the supplementary list, and that was the number that they gave me. And later on, when I got promoted, I think in my first game in the VFL, I took 17 marks and had 25 kicks against St Kilda.
That's right.
And 2 weeks later, I was on the senior list.
Yeah.
And then a week after that, I played my first game at Footscray on the illustrious Ted Whitten.
Nice.
So
that would have been an experience and a half.
So because I was just on the periphery at the start, I didn't actually like playing in practice matches, particularly against your own teammates.
Yeah.
So I always found that difficult. So once we got onto proper opposition like St Kilda in that first game, it was all on from there.
And that's it. So you got it. And tell me another question I've been thinking. How good is it to beat Collingwood 3 times in premierships?
Well, I think I'm the only one who's
You're the only one that's
right.
done that. So
Mate,
look, to beat Collingwood at any time is fantastic. Look, they're always great competitors. You know, they always let you know when they won. But to beat them in premierships, you can't get anything better than that.
Well, do you know the last time Collingwood beat Carlton in the grand final?
No.
1910.
Really?
So you never played. In fact, no one that's alive today has ever played in a losing grand final against Collingwood.
Against Collingwood, yeah.
But you were fortunate enough to play in 3, and the only player to ever have done so. That must be something that's you're pretty proud of.
Oh yeah, you're proud of all of your premierships, but to play, I only played in 5 grand finals and only played Richmond and Collingwood.
So the interesting thing about all 3 of those premierships against Collingwood is that, unlike the other premiership against Richmond in 72, Collingwood were in winning positions in all of those 3 grand finals.
Yeah, they were too.
In 1970, they were up by 44 points at half time and lost. In 79, of course, they were had a pretty good lead over us early before we came back and eventually headed them. And of course, Wayne Harms and Kenny Sheldon
combined
for a fantastic...
That was out. To all your Collingwood supporters, that was completely out.
And in 81, even 3/4 time, I think they had a 20-point lead or something.
Yes, they did. They did.
And then we came back and kicked 6 goals to nothing or something in the last quarter. So, you know, it could have been there could have been no premierships against Collingwood. So.
Look, I was lucky. I played with some very good players and over a fair span of time. So when I first started in 70, there were a lot of older players who were coming towards the end of their career.
Yeah.
And when I finished in 81, I was the oldest player coming towards the end of my career.
Yeah, that's right.
So I played with players of 3 or 4 different eras over that period.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Would have been a couple of the best eras, really.
In a way, you really were probably the only player to have experienced 2 dynasties within your playing career at Carlton. Like the 68, 70, 72, there's 3 premierships in 5 years there, plus another losing grand final in the middle of that. And then you've had the 79, 81, of course you didn't play 82, but at least you got those 2 premierships as well towards the end. Look, could have easily been 1980 as well.
When you talk about dynasties, I think probably the person who was responsible for a lot of that was Ron Barassi.
Yeah.
Because, they won the Premiership in 68 and I was lucky enough to break into the side. I played my first game, 6 games in 69, most of those on the bench. Yeah. And then I played pretty much regularly from 70 onwards. Yeah. But Barassi's influence was incredible. He made us perform like professionals. You had to turn up to training wearing the right sort of gear. You had to attend games wearing your Carlton jacket and your slacks and your tie.
Yes, I like that.
It was. He brought
Standards were there,
He brought
weren't
great standards and professionalism to the club that before was pretty piecemeal. And I think his legacy lived on and on until basically any players that had been part of Carlton had gone. And he also had a great ability to make players make their teammates accountable. So there's a lot of peer group pressure to make sure you did the right thing, not just in games but also at training. So that professionalism went through, and I really admire Barassi. I think he was the father of modern Carlton.
And you look at subsequent coaches like Nichols and Jezelenko, they carried that sort of thing on, didn't they?
Well, they came through the Barassi era.
Yeah.
And even when Parkin
and
was
even
there,
Robert Walls eventually.
Absolutely, he was part of that as well.
That's
and even
right.
when David Parkin came there were still people who had been under the Barassi era that continued that accountability, because that just pervaded all the players to make sure you play hard, but you work hard, and when the game's there to be won, you've got to make sure you put in every effort.
Would have been guys like you and Bruce Dool and guys like that would have experienced Barassi.
Absolutely.
Then Nichols, and then of course Jezelenko, and then Parkin would have seen these guys upholding standards even when he first walked in the door.
Yeah. And I still remember one of the things Barassi said, and that game against Port Adelaide last year, when we got thrashed, when we had 19 goals in a row. Our philosophy was, if there's a run, next centre bounce, you get on your player, you make sure you're accountable for that player, and don't you be the one to let your team down. And it was just a way of trying to stop a run. And there just, unfortunately, against Port Adelaide, there didn't seem to be a plan B. There was nothing. There were no plans in place to thwart that sort of a run. And it's simple.
You wouldn't have experienced too many runs of even 4 or 5 goals in a row against you back in your day.
Well, they had that sort of strategy, they knew what to do if there was any sort of run.
Yeah, we didn't have the sort of the modern day. We've got the team rules, but I think Barassi introduced the rules that Norm Smith introduced, that probably were invented by his brother Len Smith, who was a great football thinker. Norm was a great football implementer.
Yes.
And there were some basic things like 3 out of 4 marking contest, the ball hits the ground, attack direct, defend wide. 3 out of 4, you outnumber your opposition. Run to attack to create opportunities. Run back to defend. There was just some.
That was kind of just simple, wasn't it? But
simple stuff.
Yeah.
Common sense.
Yeah.
But he put it into words, and when you think about it, and the other one was when you're behind punch. I did stuff that one up a few times.
Did you ever go for a mark from behind and the player in front took it and Barassi gave you a mouthful over that?
What Barassi said, he said, I don't mind you making one mistake, but I don't ever want to see you make the same mistake.
And that's so true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you can make a mistake, but you've got to learn by it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, you took a number of marks from behind, where you flew across the pack or from behind over 3 or 4 blokes in front of you and soaring high marks.
Well, you backed yourself, didn't you?
That's exactly right. You knew you'd get it. I was just saying to Vince earlier, in 1981, it was the first year that I'd played because I had a couple of ankle injuries. I really struggled because you'd be in absolutely the right position going for the mark, and you knew you were going to get it, but you were outmarked.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I had real problems in my preparation, just sleeping and just worrying about the game, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to compete like I used to be able to.
So you knew that last year, that was it?
I was very lucky to play in 81.
Yeah.
Mail is that they actually asked you to keep going into 82, is that right?
They did, but fortunately...
It's nice to be able to retire on your own terms,
Oh,
isn't
that's the best.
Well, as I said earlier, I think Parkin always mentions the fact that there are only 2 players in his career that he didn't have to give the bullet to. One was me and the other one was David Rees-Jones. So,
There
But look, you know when your time's up, and I was replaced by Ross Ditchburn, and unfortunately for Ditch, well, he played in the 82 grand final, but got knocked out early in the game. But he's a terrific fellow, and it took him a while to find his feet, but I think he kicked 12 goals one day.
He did. He kicked 12 goals against St Kilda at Waverley one day. In fact, Rocco and I were in Perth for the game against West Coast a couple of months ago.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And we had Ross Ditchburn sitting behind us, and we had a couple of photos together. And it was great.
He was getting right
He's
into
a really
it.
nice guy.
He's a terrific fellow, and
Yeah.
he's been over here recently with a
Yes.
couple of functions.
He already came over for the Spirit of Carlton function.
Yeah, just the other day.
Yeah,
He came,
celebrating the 1981-82 reunion.
Yeah, and he came over earlier in the year for one as well. So
Yeah.
no, it's really good, and it's not bad when you can have it. I was lucky enough to retire, and,
Yes.
and Carlton were good enough to get someone like him,
Yeah.
who more than adequately filled in at full forward.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
So you
Actually, before we go any further, just quickly, the nickname Swan.
Oh, yes.
How did that come about?
It was because I was a graceful high flyer.
That's what I thought. I was just wondering if it was something else.
I think it was something else. Ricky McLean saw me running one day and he said, "Mackay, you run around like a chook with a broomstick up its clacker. I think I'll call you a Swan." And it's one of those things said in jest that lives on forever. So.
Well, footy clubs do that, don't they?
They do.
They'll pick something and that's it.
It's a bit like when we asked Wayne Johnson how did he get Dominator. Everyone thought it was because he used to dominate games and all that. No. It had something to do with how he was going in a nightclub one night.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what he thought he was like.
Yeah, there's quite a lot like that, but yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's good. And so when you first started, you started down back, didn't you?
I started at centre back mostly.
Yeah. And then they moved, and then you
Did
went
you play
up.
back pocket as well on resting ruckman and that sort of thing? Or mainly
did,
centre
I
half back?
did, but I used to hate playing back pocket because I always thought the next place from back pocket was over the fence.
That's right. That's
So, no,
right.
I enjoyed playing centre half back, and I played centre half back.
Is that where you played in your juniors?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
And I did play in the ruck a little bit as well.
Yeah.
I played with a country town called Newland.
Yes.
In the Clunes League.
Near Ballarat?
As it was then, yeah, near Ballarat. Now it's called Central Highlands League. And I did play 4 games with Dalesford on permit.
Okay.
In a higher league that was the Ballarat League then. So at Dalesford I played mostly in the ruck.
Yeah.
But at Newland I played. I've actually played fullback.
Really?
Right, okay.
Were you about 6'4" or 5?
I'm still there.
I was going to
Sorry.
say, what happened?
You still are, but what I'm saying
I
is
might have got back to 6'3".
you tend to shrink as you get older.
I think you do.
But it was about 194 centimetres?
193, yeah.
193?
Yeah.
So what's that,
That's
6'4", was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
It's a good height.
that's cripper size.
But you were very
I
mobile for someone that size.
Well, I had a
One of the reasons that you were so successful is that you could really move.
I had a good spring, and I used to love gymnastics and stuff like that, and I used to like high jump when I was going to school. All those sort of things help until you stuff up your ankle, and then you're in
Well,
a bit of
yeah,
strife.
that's it,
My
that's
left ankle was my jumping ankle,
Yeah.
and that was the one that got damaged. I think in about 1978, and I had 3 operations on it, but none of them gave back the flexibility that I had, and the spring. Each operation improved it a little bit, but not enough to.
Yeah.
1980, you got a fairly bad ankle injury too, didn't you? And
Yeah.
I think you played through that, and that might have done some long-term damage where it really might have shortened your career even by a year or 2.
I was a bit lucky. It's interesting. There's a sort of a fellowship of players, and I actually played my 250th game. I think it was against Geelong,
Yep.
and I went over on it quite badly. And I got a call next week from Sam Newman.
Okay.
Like, "Gee, what's he ringing me for?"
Yeah.
He said, "Look, come down to Geelong. We've got a new method of strapping ankles."
Really?
He said it'll prolong your career. And I went down and met George Clark, who at the time was the head trainer, and he showed me this.
Head trainer of Geelong.
Head trainer of Geelong.
Wow.
I'm not sure where we met. I don't think it was at the club. But he showed me this. We call it a heel lock. I'm not sure whether they still use it now.
Right.
But it was great because it locks your heel in place, but it kept the up and down. Stop the lateral
Be like that
movement.
strap that they use on horses.
That's probably where it come from. But I think I remember seeing it one other time. We were over in Adelaide and I was getting some treatment on my ankle at a sports clinic over there, and Andy Blixhouse, who was father of Mark Blixhouse,
father of Mark Blixhouse,
who was a great Olympic basketballer for Australia, and he had similar sort of strapping.
Right.
So it's interesting how there's a fellowship in football that operated then.
That was very nice of Sam Newman to do that for you. There you go.
I've always
Good on you, Sam.
I've always been indebted to him for that. The other one who's looked after me very well is Don Scott. So
Yes.
yeah.
What did Don do for you?
I had a run-in with prostate cancer, and Don had the same sort of issue,
Yes.
and he talked me through it, gave me a lot of advice and support.
Isn't that nice?
And he still talks to me now. He's a great
I
fellow.
like to hear stories like that. It
Yeah.
really is good to
Yeah.
see that, the rivalries that used to exist maybe on the field back then, it's all sort of bygone, and
Sure.
now it's, you guys could easily get together and have a reunion of your own just because you played in the same era and have stories amongst each other and
I was involved,
looking after each other that way. It's good.
I was involved during my career in the establishment of the Players Association.
Right.
And I got to know Don pretty well through that, and also I got to know him pretty well. We went on a Galahs trip with Harry Beitzel,
really?
and Don and I spent a fair bit of time together on that. So I got to know him pretty well. But the Players Association was a great opportunity to. We know what it is now. It's got there's an agreement with the AFL, and they get multi-million dollars. And one of the good things is they do support past players pretty well.
As they should, of course.
Well, hopefully they'll do more of that.
That's
look,
it.
I can't complain. They're very, very proactive in supporting past players, particularly in health issues that have perhaps come from degenerative type issues that have come from injuries when they're playing.
Yeah, of course. To go back to some of the grand finals.
Yep.
I want to. That 1970 grand final.
Yep. You played your first game the year before in '69.
'69, yeah.
So in '70, you'd established yourself in the team.
Yeah. I played nearly every game in '70.
Yeah.
It was a good year. No, just
so
1970, we're 44 points down. What's going on in the mindset? What's going on with Barassi? Like, how was he in that?
Do you remember very distinctly what happened at half time in that game?
Well, I do. I remember more at three-quarter time because he used a bit of reverse psychology on us, and he said before we'd started to come back and we were still down at three-quarter time.
Yes.
But he said, "Win, lose or draw, I'm absolutely proud of every one of you." And we said, "Lose or draw? You've got to be joking!" And it was, exactly, because the momentum was with us, and we all thought, that we were capable of going on from there. And, everything fell into place that day.
It did.
Teddy Hopkins coming on and kicking 4 goals.
Yes.
And, everyone remembers Hopkins came on, but very few people remember exactly who we replaced. So that's always sad.
But then again, look, he's still part of the team. He's still got a premiership medal around his neck.
Yeah, for sure.
He was just in the bad half.
Well, he still did his. He still.
No, it's all part. As long as you run out on the ground.
Better than being an injury sub in today's game and not even getting on the ground like poor old James Jordan last year.
That's it.
They reckon they could have put him on for 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Anyway, it was a memorable grand final.
Oh, it wasn't.
The best of all time, I reckon.
Well, it's probably the biggest crowd that they'll ever have.
121,000.
121,696.
There you go.
There's only been a bigger crowd at the MCG. Do you know what it's for?
What, in a
something to do with royalty?
No.
Is it something to do with royalty?
No.
Olympic Games, maybe?
No.
Commonwealth Games?
Maybe a concert.
The Billy Graham Crusade.
Oh, yes, of course.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Hallelujah, brother.
There you go. That is funny. That's unreal.
I think it's something like, I can't remember the exact number, but something like 150,000 people, because then with
they use the whole ground.
Exactly, with people on the ground as well as in the stand.
They use the whole ground. Running out that first game, that grand final, that first grand final, the roar, you running out.
Hang on. You're talking about the first Premiership. Because '69, we also played the grand final that year against Richmond.
Yeah, but I didn't. I was
you
in the
didn't
second.
play.
I was in the second, so I ran out. It was a bit quieter in '69 than the second.
That's what I'm saying. That first, you run out. You've now got to that point where I suppose all people want to get to play in a grand final. Do you remember it?
Absolutely. It was electric to run onto the ground. But look, Barassi.
Nervous?
You sort of were nervous, but Barassi again had the philosophy that look, take confidence. We've trained, we've prepared ourselves for this. Take confidence in the fact that you can go out there and you're going to do your job.
Yeah.
So, but when you first went out, the wall of sound was just something phenomenal, and to
we just hold on and keep going.
To have heard that really was really quite impressive.
Well, of course, the atmosphere includes balloons and music and everything else, doesn't it?
Really, you suck it all. What he said was, look, suck it in,
enjoy
it, but then the rest
concentrate.
Of it, get back to your football, and that's what everybody did.
Yes.
He was just a terrific, because he'd had that experience. He'd played in a lot of grand finals.
Well, he'd played in 6 grand finals, winning grand finals for Melbourne. So
Yeah, no, so he was a good mentor in giving you a good idea about how to prepare, what to do in this situation, which is, you know.
Was he all fire and brimstone back then, like he was in some of his days as coach at North Melbourne?
No.
North Melbourne and Melbourne. He was a real fire and brimstone type coach. Was he a lot more mellow in his earlier days of coaching? Was he?
Look, he still was
Just still fire up.
difficult, but yeah, no, he was. He was. The good thing about Brass was his ability to get the best out of players with different personalities.
Yes.
If you've got an extrovert like John Gould and an introvert like Bruce Dool, they're at the opposite ends of the confidence spectrum. But to be able, and then there's a whole lot of players in that intermediate area. But he was just the way he got you to prepare yourself and gave you confidence. It didn't matter whether you were an extrovert or an introvert.
So
it worked well.
So his like strengths were knowing how to communicate with each individual. So
Absolutely.
one needed a good thick head, and the other one needed to be like cuddled. You know.
Yeah. Well, sometimes he was pretty tough on individuals.
Yeah.
Because he knew, or sometimes he was tough on an individual, but they knew in advance it was going to happen because it was setting an example to the rest of the team.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
That was a bit contrived, but you know he was clever about it.
He probably also knew that with some of them, if you gave them a bit of a jab, that it'd fire them up. So I'll show you.
Oh yeah.
I know some players had that attitude.
Yeah, well,
with
like
Barassi.
John Gould, but you know, it turned him into a bit of a sting would turn him from a good player into an absolute champion.
We'll just wait for this motorbike to go past. If you're wondering where we are, by the way, everyone, we're in front of the Princess Theatre, not Princess Park, Princess Theatre, here in Spring Street in Melbourne, at a lovely place called the European.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, we had an interview here earlier this year with Wayne Johnson and Kenny Hunter, so
A couple
it's
of
good to be
fair
back.
players too. You played with both of them.
Played with both of them in 81, because Kenny Hunter came over in 81.
He came over in 81. He was a bit of a revolution when he came over. Right? A big, high-flying, skinny little man.
To have recruited both the Pizzusto and Hunter in the 1 year was, they were fantastic additions to Carlton's team.
And get Parkin too as the new coach, because you had Percy Jones before that.
Yeah. One of the things I remember most about Peter Pizzusto, we were playing Geelong at Waverley. I think it was in a final.
Yes,
and
it was. That's where he kicked the goal of the year.
Yeah, well, one of the Nankervis brothers was coming out of defence.
That's right.
He smothered the ball off his boot, grabbed hold of the ball, turned around and kicked a goal. That was, I've never seen anything. I was pretty close to it. I'd never seen anything like that.
That was the goal of the year, 1981. And Peter Pizzusto has been selling prints of that for the last 40 years.
Well, he then got Mark of the Year.
He got Mark of the Year.
Well, that's right. Also against Geelong. He loved playing against Geelong.
He took it out of my hands.
That's right. He did
did he?
He did too, because you were flying for that, Mark.
I reckon I would have got
That's when you probably thought, 5 years ago, I'd have outmarked you on that one, Pizzusto. Yeah.
Well, you did were involved in a couple of, you seemed involved in it. There was another big mark.
Yes.
Well,
what?
The most famous.
Well, the most famous mark.
Well, you kicked it.
You
kicked the ball to Alex Jeslinko in the famous 1970 grand final where he took the mark over Jerker Jenkins.
McKay to the wing on the southern
Yeah,
side.
that's it. I love it.
You've got Mike Williamson's commentary down pat. Yeah. Well, that's right. In fact, Paul Sebastiani's probably watching this right now. He can
nail that.
He can nail that commentary.
I might have got it wrong, but that's my best memory of it.
You got it right. But talking about high flying marks, you were renowned for that more than anything else in the game, and that's one of the reasons I had your number on my back when I was a kid. No, no, I'm not saying that. I really admired your ability to take marks, and hardly a week would go past on World of Sport when they did the marks of the day or the marks of the round without you at least getting one or two every single week. And it was just
a good set of hands, man. Those one grab. And as you said, I could see you back yourself.
Anything like that?
Sorry?
Did you ever get a mark of the year?
No, I don't. I'm not sure.
Were you in the last sort of? Surely you were in the last half a dozen.
Look, there were some pretty good marks in my year. Anyway,
True.
Paul Van der Haar,
Yes.
Peter Knights,
Yes.
Gary Parks.
Gary who?
Parks from Melbourne.
Gary Parks.
I didn't got the wrong Christian name. Anyway.
Parks, was it? I don't remember a Parks at Melbourne. Was this back in the early 70s?
Gary Hardiman.
Oh, Gary Hardiman, yes.
No, but Parks was a good player.
Was he?
Yeah,
Okay.
a good mark as well.
Nah, there was some good though. There was Jezza too.
Trevor Barker and
Trevor
Robbie
Barker,
Flower
yeah.
and people like that.
Yeah, and Gary Dempsey used to take a massive number of
Yes,
marks every year.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, but there were high flyers everywhere in the 70s. I mean, it's one of the features of the 70s was the high flying marks, and that's why they could make a video of a song called Up There Kazali and have so much video footage to use.
Well, these days, because the skills are so good, that they a lot of times it doesn't go to a contest.
Well, they don't
right.
want it to go to a
No,
contest.
they want to. Well, if you have the
sad,
choice,
isn't it?
you have the choice of taking a mark out in front of you and turning around kicking a goal rather than
that's right.
a 50-50 in a marking contest. You'd go for the
And that's
pass
all.
every time.
That's what we loved about the game was the contest. Like it used to be 1-on-1, and they used to play in each
And
other
the
all
same
day.
players would play each other nearly every time
Yeah.
they met. You know, it didn't matter who won the previous contest. If it was Peter Knights and Paul Vanderhaar, that's exactly who they'd played next to
It's
each time again.
back in the days where they put all the numbers into a hat and they picked them out with a pitchfork. Three, back, forward, centre.
That's it. That's it. What did you back and then you played? Like you kicked a lot of goals. You play forward.
Yeah, you went from back.
I went-
Everyone's going to say they like kicking goals, but which one did you prefer?
I probably preferred playing the ruck rover
Oh,
because I was changing with Trevor Keogh.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So I had the best of both worlds because
You did.
when I was ruck roving, I'd obviously go work around the ground. When I went to the half forward flank, I had Keogh kicking to me, and he was one of the most beautiful passes.
Oh, yeah.
I had a really good relationship with Keogh and particularly with Jeff Southby kicking
Yes.
out from full back.
Yes.
Yeah.
I took a lot of marks
Yes.
from both of those guys over
Jeff
the years.
used to kick a lot of torpedoes from fullback, didn't
He
he?
did, but when he was kicking to me, he used to kick drop cones. I don't want to do those talks.
They used to break your fingers
Kick
with those torpedoes.
kick them when I'm resting on the half forward line.
Well, they say like we talk about the other 43, Kuda, and he was like the prototype of the new. But I'm telling you, I reckon you were the prototype there. You were playing both ends. You could run. You could mark. You know.
You were almost the perfect utility. You had the height, but the mobility. You could take
Yeah.
marks in key positions. You could go forward. You could play in the midfield. Is there anything you couldn't do?
Win a brown.
You must have gone close.
Win a
Did you ever
best
go
and
close?
fairest. I came 7th one year.
7th one year. And yet, best and fairest, you never even got more than
I got
about 8th or 9th. or something.
Third I came.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Which year was that?
Oh, I don't know, 72 or 73,
Right.
one of those.
I'll take the 4 premierships.
Yeah,
mate, just
I'll take
while-
the
Yeah,
four
no,
premierships too.
look, the great thing is you get a premiership medal that they present, not on actually they started presenting them on the day, but they were just with a club on it. The one they present to you later in the year has the team on it.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful medal and it's got
Yes.
an Olympic motif on one side and
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
that size. It's a lovely medal.
Yeah.
And it's they're my most treasured possessions.
They
To have,
would be.
to have those, and I've got all 4 on it, mounted on together. And
Are they up on display?
no, my wife said we're not running a museum. She said put them in the cupboard.
You know what? I hear that a lot. They don't put them up. Oh, if that was me, man, they'd be straight
Remember
up
when
there.
we went and saw Peter Francis at his place in Rosebud a few weeks ago? He's so proud of just that premiership medal that he
Yeah.
won.
He brought
and he
everything
had
out.
the blazer and the tie that
Yep.
they used to wear. And
Yep.
so heartwarming to see players that really, respected, not only respect their time in the game, but treasured those things and were so grateful for the opportunity to play in a premiership
Well,
with a club like Carlton.
He didn't need to be grateful. He was a terrific player.
He was,
CBA,
wasn't he?
as we called him. He had some really good years with Carlton, and unfortunately finished his
It's
career.
always sad to see that he had to leave in the end.
Went to Fitzroy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, a lot of. When you look at the Carlton players who ended their career at St Kilda, that was disappointing as well.
Well-
Particularly Mark Hugh and McConville was
Yeah.
one of the great players. Wow Jones.
I think you'll find
Spiro
that
Gorgamilis.
there was a decision made then that these guys had to be moved on, and they probably felt like they still had a year or two to contribute.
Yeah.
And a club like St Kilda said, look, give them to us because we need to change our culture, and these guys will instill a lot of the success that
Yeah.
these guys have learned at Carlton, and that's what they've told us.
Yeah.
When we've spoken to guys like Spiro Gorgamilis and
Marku.
even a Ricky Nixon and
Yeah.
Alex Marku, they all said the same thing, that what they brought to St Kilda was a cultural thing more than anything else.
Yeah, and Kenny Sheldon as well. So.
Instilling that success-based culture into a club like that. But
The great thing is
They
that
tried.
all of those players are still Carlton through and
Oh,
through,
yeah.
even though they played at another club. It's not just
Yes.
Vinny Capeccio played at
Yep.
Melbourne.
Melbourne and Sydney Swans, yeah.
But he's still a Carlton person.
Absolutely.
Like they're
Doesn't matter where they also
once a
gone.
Carlton person, always a Carlton
Yeah,
person.
I
and,
think so.
And that's
And even ones that started somewhere else and then came to Carlton, like say Abel Perovic.
yeah.
He considers himself more of a Carlton man than a St Kilda man.
We found it a bit harder to get Peter McKenna and Billy
Wow.
Barrett and
I'd say probably even guys like
and Greg Wells has even played a premiership, but look, he
Still a
played
Melbourne man.
played all of his. Well, and I don't blame him. He was a terrific player
Yes,
at
he
Melbourne,
was.
and got very close to winning a Brownlow
No
medal
doubt.
at Melbourne,
Yeah.
and finished his career at Carlton. David Clark, the same like that.
Yeah, Clark, yeah.
They came late in their career.
Unfortunately for Clark, he didn't get the premiership medal around his neck that he thought he might get.
That was tough when
But
they.
Greg Wells did.
Yeah, tough when they ran onto the
Yeah,
field.
they
and
ran on. That's
yeah.
still a story.
And
I think Parkin still wasn't happy about
He
that.
still feels guilty
Yeah,
about
feels
that.
still guilty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But you can't
Hey, tell
please
me, you
everyone.
played in one losing grand final, is that correct?
1973. Yeah.
73. So
We won in 72
Yeah.
when we weren't supposed to,
Yeah.
and we lost in 73 when we probably were favourites. But in 72, Richmond were the better side.
Yeah.
But Nichols decided he decided we were going to have a shootout.
Yeah.
So
And
it
you
was,
did.
was going to be all attack. So
How many did you kick then?
I don't think I kicked any.
Well, you're playing back probably.
No, you're playing
in
back.
72 I was playing on
Yeah.
Neil Baum, so yeah, I didn't
Oh,
kick any.
did he give you?
Actually, it was
Was there
Neil
any
Baum who
punches in the
caused
back of the
it. Was
head,
Neil,
Baum?
it was Neil Baum that caused most of the havoc in '73, knocking out Southby and
Well, I was a sider for them in '72. He busted my jaw in two places in
That's
the
right.
second quarter, and I wanted at half time I wanted to come off, and I went to the doctor. I said, "Look, my jaw's broken, it's hanging down." He said, "Yeah," he said, "but Vinny Wade has just broken his ankle, so you got to go back out." Well, in the
with your
third,
jaw hanging off like that.
in the third quarter, I was down at the city end of the ground, and I made a bit of a weak effort to go for a mark, and somehow I put my knee up. Royce Hart got under my knee, pushed me straight up in the air, and I ended up taking this mark. It was the most photographed mark of my career, and the one I least wanted to take. Because I came down, I was more interested in holding the jaw than the ball. But
So you played the rest of the game with the broken jaw.
yeah, and afterwards, after
Did
the
they wrap
game,
you up or they
no,
do?
didn't do that.
No, they didn't do that in those days. No.
After the game, I ran straight off the ground, and there was not a single person in the change rooms. I had a shower, got changed, drove up to St Vincent's
Yourself.
myself.
This is after which grand final?
72.
72, when we won.
Yep.
Wow.
And
Well, you
broken
weren't
jaw.
part of the celebrations after that, or not?
well, that night I came back and everyone was eating steak and
And you couldn't eat
all I
anything.
could have was soup.
Sip soup through a straw. Oh
Unreal.
dear me.
Unreal. That would never happen now. Oh my God. How things change.
So that would have
Did
been
you know in that
bittersweet
72
for you?
did they give you a second place medal?
73, you know.
73, sorry.
No, that wasn't part of it then. I think that only came in around in the 80s
Yes.
when
Oh,
Peter
okay.
Moore threw his.
Yeah. But I was going to ask about that. Like, really.
Yeah. Well, they presented in I think in 79 we got one, and it was 79 was silver.
Yes.
And it's a lovely medal, but it only just has Carlton and a Premiership medal, Premiership Cup on it. And in '81,
That's the one that Pete
was-
Francis had.
it was a gold-plated silver medal, and
Right.
it had the CFC logo on the back and the cup, and the Premiership Cup on the front.
Right.
Look, they're both nice, but they're not, in my view, they're not as good as the bigger one that
Of course.
has the full team on them.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
excellent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Well, I'll tell you what, you also played, I mean, obviously the 72 grand final was a fantastic win against the odds. It was a shootout. We kicked 28 goals, 9 to 22 goals, 18. It was 50 goals scored for the game. It was an unbelievable game. But after that dynasty was over, by the end of 73 we lost. Then we sort of tailed off a bit. What are your memories of those years? Because you really probably played your best football during a lot of those years, between 70 and 79.
I count those as our lost years. We had a team that was good enough to
Yeah.
win more flags in that.
What was
era.
wrong back then, do you think?
We lost our way a little bit.
Does Nick retired
Nick,
after 74?
yeah, he left, and there were sort of stopgap coaches. Ian Thorogood was made coach. He was there as a reserves coach, but it didn't really sit that
Was he
well
a
with
former Melbourne player
He
or
was
a
a
former
Mel-
Melbourne coach?
former Melbourne player and a very good player.
Right.
But just coaching, I don't think he wasn't prepared for it because he was quite happy to be an assistant coach, but not a senior coach.
Yeah.
And that he was
was thrown into a deep end. He didn't really want the job, or
well, I'm not sure whether he wanted it, but yeah. So it just didn't work out.
Yeah. And after Ian Thorogood left, then of course we had the drama of 1978 in Ian Stewart coming across.
Yeah, and that.
What were your memories of that? Because we've spoken to a few of the guys about that.
Well, Ian Stewart.
Not a lot of them had very good relationship with him.
Well,
for the short time he was there,
he was difficult because he had predetermined ideas about Carlton and about our skills, and when he used to try and set up training drills that seemed quite complex, and we couldn't pick them up straight away, and he'd crack it because he said you're supposed to be a smart team, and he said you can't even follow basic rules. So again, it just wasn't a good fit for us at the time. Had a good side, but wasted opportunity.
Yeah. Do you think guys like that get jobs as senior coaches because of their playing careers? He'd won 3 Brownlow medals with 2 different clubs, and was he all cranked up to be a senior coach, really? Or
he had some terrific ideas.
You think so?
But he just the way he put it across just didn't work.
Communication
just didn't work. Not that's why Barassi was so good, as we said.
Yeah. And of course, then Jezza took over.
Yeah. Well, Jezza took over, and they were the years.
Were you happy about that? Did you get along well with him?
Yeah, I got along with him. We were just frightened to lose because we were talking to some of the other
We've
guys.
heard this.
The training really was really tough.
He used to flog you if you lost.
Yeah, absolutely.
No wonder you only lost about 3 games in 1979.
Yeah.
Well, it was only 3 games. That's right.
But again, because we were so fit, we went into games with confidence. Because you knew you were going to not just be able to play, but see the game right out and play well right to the finish.
Yeah.
And some of the younger players who started in that era, I think that made their career because they knew how to train and they knew how to prepare themselves properly, and they did so for the rest of their careers. Yeah. Some of them went for a long time.
Yep.
Someone like Harms, he came in and he was a star, and he said that
Harms Ashman,
Harm Ashman, and he said that when you went into that grand final, even though you only won by 5 points, he said he felt you were never going to lose that grand final. You were ready. You were never going to lose it.
Yeah, I'm not sure why, but we all had that innate belief that we were going to win.
It's a belief, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a belief that when we were down, we were still able to fight back. And
did you worry when you saw Jezza do his ankle or knee and go off the ground? Was it an ankle or a knee?
I think it was an ankle.
Ankle. I was more worried in '73 when Big Nick got hit by Laurie Fowler.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry to go backwards, but
of course.
But it was it could have made a bit of a difference, but because Jezza was he'd moved from the forward line to the halfback line, and he became a really valuable rebounding halfback long before his time, and his ability to hit an opponent trying to tackle him in the chest with a push off. I'd never seen that happen so effectively as he did it in those early years. And
the good old don't argue.
Exactly.
He probably started that.
And even when he went to St Kilda, he still played some damn good football as a halfback flanker. He was much more consistent. Not that he was always a brilliant player, but he was more consistently brilliant and valuable, I think, in some ways when he went to a halfback line.
Yeah. Did you ever follow the political side of things? Because at the end of '79, great premiership, but then all of a sudden, the board gets challenged and George Harris gets challenged and replaced by Ian Rice, and next minute Jesselinko's gone after coaching us to a famous premiership.
Well, I think we all of us wanted to know why, and because
what were the players told back then?
Keep out of it.
Yeah.
Basically, what happens in the committee area is for the club to sort out.
Yeah.
Your job is to be.
Why do you think Jezza didn't distance himself from it and just say, "Oh well, it's up to them to work it out"?
But wasn't he good, mate?
He was very, very loyal to George Harris, wasn't he?
Yeah. Look, I think George Harris had offered him whatever. I'm not sure what it was, but he made his decision, and he was pretty adamant that that's the way it was going to go. So look, it's
and he stood by it.
Yeah, he stood by it, which you got to admire him for. But from a Carlton perspective, it's sad to see him finish his career at St Kilda. Not there's anything against St Kilda, but to see someone who's great.
Well, Jez is a Carlton man,
exactly,
and he should have stayed there. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
and he probably would have won a couple more premierships.
Well, we'll never know. A lot of people
say
say that we would have won 1980 as well if Jezza had stayed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then again, you probably wouldn't have had parking come along in 81 and 82, so...
Yeah, the swings and roundabouts.
Swings and roundabouts. Right. Your only year under David Parkin was 81, another successful premiership year, and a new coach and a couple of new recruits. We talked about Bazusto and Hunter. How did you find your last year of football?
I didn't enjoy it much at all.
No?
And it wasn't, as I said earlier, it was more about me because I was just struggling with my form and with my ankle, exactly.
Yeah.
And even just training was difficult at times.
Were you ever in doubt about your position in the team, or had you come good towards the end of that year?
Well, I remember...
Were you ever worried, geez, I wonder if they're going to lead me out of the grand final team?
I was very worried one night because David Parkin used to ring us up on a Thursday night and say, you got to do this, you got to do that. He rang me up one night and I wasn't a great frame of mind. He said, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. He said, okay, mate, it's just a game. Just a game. And I just said to my wife, I said, I think I played my last game. But no, he didn't take it to heart.
That's funny, yeah.
He didn't take it to heart, so it was all sorted out.
And of course, you kicked a couple of great goals in that 1981 grand final, one of the first ones of the game, if not the first one of the game, and famously your last kick in football was a goal, the last goal of the game and your last goal in your career. What a great way to finish off.
It was, and I didn't start that well because the first mark I went for, I broke my finger.
Oh, really?
And it was, and I got the trainer to strap it, but then I couldn't sort of hold my hands properly, so I took the strapping off. And, that was the disappointing aspect because I really wanted to go out in a.
Well, from memory, that last goal came after a chest mark, so you didn't have to really have to extend the
Not only
hands
did it
up that
come
much.
from a chest mark, I led out and Alex Marcoux lace up
right straight into your chest.
Absolutely beautiful. And I thanked him for that, and I'll thank him for eternity. I said, look, what a better way for you to help me finish my career than to give me a pass like that. And luckily I went back and
the last kick,
sailed through.
That's a pretty good thing. Like your last kick in AFL football, VFL at the time, was a goal and a premiership.
And a premiership medal around your neck after.
And I didn't have to go to hospital that night.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, you could have
Did you know you were done? Like you announced it pretty much straight after the game.
You announced it.
Yeah, I said that's it for me. Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, and I was actually elated and relieved.
Yes, that's when you know you've made the right decision.
Yeah.
When you feel a sense of relief.
100%.
Yeah. And good on Alex Marcoux. What a great guy he is too.
And he'll tell you about it too.
He's a wonderful chap, and
he's a great guy.
I'll love him till the day I die.
Yeah,
yes.
Great. Now, how about the Blues of 2022 and beyond?
Here we are. We've got to tell everyone we're right at the end of the season. We're basically in the first week of the finals when we're recording this.
Yeah.
Well,
so,
I was involved with Carlton in its dark era in the middle when I was on the board for 3 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
the Collins years, were they?
Yeah,
2003, 4 and 5?
Morgan, and that was the most frustrating football experience I had because we were at the time most of the board meetings were about how we could generate money and save money because we were in deep financial stress.
Because of all of the fines that have been imposed on the club?
Yep, the fines and the draft penalties.
Yep.
I think the AFL really made a massive mistake at the time because we said that we put in place strategies to make sure this never ever happens again at Carlton. Ian Collins had worked at the AFL, so he knew exactly how we had to approach it.
Yep.
But the AFL, in their infinite lack of wisdom, went ahead and penalised us, I think, nearly $1 million.
That's right.
And draft picks that were really costly.
Yep.
And you just saw last week against Collingwood, Collingwood could draw a crowd like it drew, basically by putting Carlton in the doldrums for 20 years. It's like cutting off one of your own arms. And I think that was some really poor decision making at the AFL, particularly when you've got a board that's given its commitment that it won't do similar things and trying to cheat on the salary cap.
Yes.
So that was frustrating. But anyway, moving forward to today, I think Carlton are finally back on track, and I think I said earlier to
disappointing not to make finals.
It's very disappointing not to make finals, particularly when we had it in our grasp and just let those last 2 games slip.
Before you keep going, would anyone in your day have said it's a successful year even though you're not playing finals?
He's not going to put him under the bus, but No, that's the
I mean,
answer. There's no
is that
way.
the difference in culture between what used to be the case
Well,
at Carlton and what is now the case?
It'd be a successful year if you weren't good enough to make the finals, but
Yeah.
when you're good enough to make
Yeah.
it, it's frustrating because to miss out by 2 points if we had a drawn,
Yes.
4 points if we had a won, to be that close and not to get there is disappointing.
Take 1977. That year we were in the finals on the ladder. It was the top 5 back then. We were in the top 5 for the entire season.
Went out straight
And
sets.
no, we didn't play finals.
Oh, that was
You're thinking of
76.
76.
Yeah.
So we lost the last game and dropped out in the very last game. That's exactly what happened this year. So 45 years later, that same thing's happened. Now back then, do you
I think that was
remember
the day of the
what was
fog. The year of the fog.
what was the attitude from the club towards having finished out of the finals? Would they have said, "Oh, but it's a successful year, boys"?
No, I think they said, this is a disaster.
It's a disaster.
You've got to, you've got to learn from it and make sure you've got to make sure it hurts too.
Yeah.
Because you've got to make sure you get in this situation. You never let that same.
And we won't know. We won't know how that's going to affect
How
this
that plays
group
out
until
Yeah.
next year, right?
Correct.
So we'll see what happens. But I think we're on the right track now. I think we're short 3 or 4 players still, just to finish it off. But at least we're on the right track. We've learned some lessons. What do you reckon?
No, I agree. I think they have had in some ways they've had a year of. Well, it's been
Improvement?
Improvement,
Yes.
Improvement and
massive
progression.
improvement because we didn't get thrashed in any game.
Yeah.
And we fought games out to the finish.
Yes.
And I think, as I said earlier, I said
Never
to
had
Michael-
any heavy losses at all.
Michael Voss during the year when I just met him briefly, I said, look, you've given us pride back because last year, the year before you were coaching, we ended up getting thrashed. Now we can say at least if we don't
Competitive in
win,
every game.
we've fought the game right out to the finish.
Yeah.
And, look, I think that's good. And the other thing you've got to take into account is our list is thin. And we had injuries to key players during the year, and
And we did well with those injuries
exactly.
to be where we are. Yeah.
And but it's given opportunities to some other younger players like DeConey and one in particular perhaps wouldn't have
Got
been
so much
forced
going on,
wouldn't have been forced
Yeah.
into playing first ruck like he did, and he did an admirable job for most of the year. So that'll stand him in good stead for the future.
Yeah, that's it.
Now, 2 players I want to ask you about. One is your namesake in McKay, Harry.
Yep.
How do you view him and his progress? And the other one is your numbers sake, Will Setterfield, number 43.
Well, first on Harry. Look, I think Harry's got a lot of ability. I'd prefer to see him kick the ball straight rather than around the corner.
Don't start. That gives me heartburn.
But
Both of them should just
Most of us supporters who are old enough to remember when players used to kick straight for goal, get the Alka-Seltzers out when Harry McKay has a shot like that.
Look, I think he's got a lot of. He's early at the start of his career, and I think if he keeps his head on his shoulders, he can be an absolute champion for Carlton. Let's hope he stays at the club.
Well, he was a Coleman medalist last year.
Will Setterfield. Look, I think he's had a.
Good finish to the season.
And he played very well in the VFL on Saturday. So, look, maybe.
Do you ever follow the 43s over the years?
Oh, absolutely.
I think you have to, don't you?
Yeah, you always keep an interest.
You probably get called up by the club now and then to present jumpers to the latest number 43.
No, they're like you guys. They get cooed.
There you go, Rocco. Is that a shot at you there?
I like the young blokes. I know. We've got to accommodate, babe, but we got you.
We did.
Eventually got you.
I appreciate it, sir.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to
No,
ask?
I think that's it. I think we've got a great insight. Thanks for joining us on the Jumper Punch. Now, you've got
of all the credentials that you've had in your football career, nothing's going to match this latest
Nah,
one.
listen, man. 4 premierships, man.
3 against Collingwood, no one else has
3
ever
against
done it.
Collingwood, 270 odd games.
63.
And goals, how many goals?
277, wasn't it?
277.
Yeah.
But now you're a legend of the Jumper Punch.
Thank you very
You're
much.
right up on top of that. So thank you very much.
Well,
My
Swan,
pleasure.
you're a fantastic player. I'm glad we've done this interview because I did have to argue a lot with Rocco about
Here we go.
let's get Kuda, but let's also do David McKay. He was a champion of the club.
The 43s have got some really good.
I'm very glad we got you, and thanks again for your time.
No worries.
And we salute you. Good
Thank
on
you.
you, Swan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
All
thanks
the
very
best.
much.